Number 1. This is actually a story about my stepmom and her best friend. I have my own, but I'm so hesitant to drag some of them up. I'm hoping telling someone else's story will open me up a little bit more. My stepmom didn't like us much, but she told my sister and I this experience growing up to scare us out of being stupid. It was my family's stranger danger story. My stepmom, we're going to call her Macy, grew up as a kind of privileged teen in the 70s, and her mum had moved their family over here, the States, from England when she was about 9. She went to a pretty nice high school in a really nice town. There, she made friends with a girl, Lily, who didn't exactly run with Macy's type of crowd, popular, stereotypical, etc. But they really hit it off, and Lily would take Macy out to do her type of stuff, which was hiking, fishing, sailing. There's even a hilarious set of pictures of them camping. My stepmom has raccoon eyes and looks like she hates everything. Anyway, because of Lily's influence, the two of them would do stuff like that a good amount. One Sunday, they decided to go on a hike in some hills about an hour away. Macy put on what I'm sure were her extremely expensive hiking shoes, and the two of them drove off to the hiking trails. Lily parked in this big clearing with makeshift parking spots. You know, like a piece of wood making the head of a space. But there were no other cars there. This was only important in hindsight. They started hiking up the hill, off the path because Lily fancied herself as something of a badass. The hike was nothing extraordinary. If you asked my stepmom, she would probably just lament for 15 minutes about how sticky and buggy it was. Anyway, they reached the top of the hill and my stepmom was done. The polished, pampered side of her was coming out, and she groaned until Lily, begrudgingly, said okay. They would rest and then walk down again, slower. They'd been heading down the hill for maybe 10 minutes, when Macy started bitching again. Lily conceded to walking down the side of the road instead of the rough hiking trail. So, there they are, probably looking like a couple of tools geared up for hiking and walking down a crappy road. And after not even 5 minutes, a truck pulled up next to them. It was red and rusty, and just generally looked like a clunker. The guy driving rolled down the window, and the girls looked in through the passenger's side window. He had a big beard, a baseball cap pulled down, and long brown hair. He greeted them and even smiled through his beard, asking if they needed a ride. Macy described him as charming, and even cute. Lily still says the moment he greeted her, her hackles went up. Despite her better judgment, my stepmom convinced her to get in the truck. She said it must only be a 10-minute drive down to the car, tops. The two girls opened the passenger's door to this rusty old thing, and the guy directed them behind the seat to get into the back. They settled in, and the truck started rumbling forwards. Lily always says that was the point it hit her, what a mistake they had just made. The back seat was clean enough, but there was a rope on the floor behind the driver's seat, and 4 boxes of saran wrap, half hanging out from under the passenger's seat. It seemed creepy and weird, but Lily didn't want to freak my stepmom out, so she just kept her mouth shut. After 10 minutes of driving, the woods didn't look any clearer, and they hadn't seen another car the whole time. Lily asked how long he thought it would be. He said he was taking a different route down the hill, and had to stop somewhere to get something first. The girls were 16 and 17, and Lily didn't want to press the issue. She was scared. She can remember his hair, because she was sitting behind him. He looked like a woodsy guy, but his hair was super tangled and dirty. She noticed crusted mud on his collar, and tried to find something identifiable about him, but just got more scared the more she picked up on little details. He was youngish, strong-looking, and had about a foot on both of them. So, they didn't ask any more questions. and he didn't offer any information. And they drove on. Several minutes after that, they reached a tiny shack, or a log cabin looking place, right there in the clearing of the trees. There was an old stump where someone had been chopping wood, and a huge axe stuck into the log. Lily was definitely on red alert now. The guy turned off the truck and slipped out of it saying, "I'll be right back. Don't get out." And he disappeared into the house. Lily started talking to my stepmom about how she was incredibly uncomfortable, but she mostly just dismissed it. Lily started begging, increasingly freaked out, and finally put her foot down, demanding that Macy exit the truck with her. So they got out and walked around the front of the vehicle. The house was around 50 yards in front of them. Why this guy would have left these two young girls in the truck alone while going into the house is beyond me. They wandered around, looking at it hesitantly. If this guy was really decent and just trying to give them a ride, it would be really rude to just run off, right? My stepmom had this strict upbringing when it came to manners and a public persona, and she saw it as an issue of that nature. So she actually started to head back to the truck, opening the front door to climb in behind the driver's seat. Lily was of course pissed off, and followed her to yell some more. That's when they noticed it. On the driver's side floor, half hidden under the seat, there was a big hatchet. It had dried, reddish-brown stains covering the blade and stuck to the floor under it. Lily understandably lost her shit at seeing it. My stepmom started getting hysterical. They decided that leaving was by far the best option at this point, and just booked it off the side of the property into the trees. They bumbled around in the trees for a little while, until Lily was fairly confident they were on their way back down the hill. My stepmom cried all the way down. Lily felt really bad about it, but was also completely freaked out that the guy would hear them, and so kept trying to calm her down. When they finally got back down to the bottom, and saw the old wooden fence that surrounded the original parking area, they were relieved. But, as they got closer, they saw it. The truck. It was parked on the other side of the gravelly makeshift lot, just sitting there, facing the other way innocently. They couldn't see if anyone was in it, and of course, Macy wanted to run for the car, but Lily was super hesitant. Lily managed to calm my stepmom down, saying she wanted to wait before running out into the open, to see what was out there. Remember, this was taking place in the 1970s, no cell phones. There was no ranger station or anyone around. The parking lot was big, and empty, and open, and who knows what would have happened if they decided to stroll across it. Thankfully, Lily convinced my stepmom to chill, and the two of them hunkered down against a big tree, hidden by bushes and other trees, and waited it out for what seemed like a couple of hours, when dark started to fall. They were just planning their dash to their car, when they heard a clunk. Across the lot, they watched as one of the back doors to their car swung open. The bearded guy slid his way out of the back seat. He got out, shut the door, looked around at the surrounding woods for several moments, and then walked back to his truck. The truck lumbered past their car and out of sight. Several minutes after watching him drive away, they sprinted to their car as fast as they could, jumped in, and peeled out before they had even shut the doors. If this guy is still alive, he's really old. Thanks to this story that my stepmom told me, I always check my back seat before I get into my car. Number 2. I've been reading stories on here for a while now, and I figured I'd post my own. I had to get my brother to help me recount this, as I was 12 at the time, and scared shitless as a result of what happened. This happened about 6 years ago. As stated, I was about 12, and my brother was 26 at the time. My brother had been serving in the US Army for several years when this happened, and was deploying in the Middle East on his second deployment if I remember correctly. Also of note was that he was a Green Beret and had recently, 3 or 4 months prior to this trip, completed the Army Special Forces qualification course, Robin Sage and all that, and by then was an active duty SF engineer sergeant. Definitely not someone you'd want to fuck around with. Given that we both grew up with a passion for the outdoors, he thought it would be nice to take me on a backpacking trip in northern Alabama, the Sipsey Wilderness for those familiar with the area, before he left for 9 months. The trip had gone smoothly up until the third night when we were camping out. Around 8 PM, we had our tent set up, had eaten dinner, and were sitting by the fire talking about typical boy shit, guns, girls, etc. For some reference, our spot was about 50 yards from a large stream, and about 50 yards downhill adjacent to a large path. Our camp, the stream and the path, formed a triangle of sorts. This was summertime in Alabama, so it wasn't quite dark yet when 2 guys, who looked to be in their late 20s, wandered up and asked if we had seen any hogs while we were hiking around. Given that this is rural Alabama, we actually had seen some further into the wilderness area and told them so. Even though they were relatively polite, my brother called them good old boys, I got a seriously creepy vibe from them. Dirty clothes, greasy hair, scraggly facial hair, etc. I think they looked like they belonged in the movie Deliverance. They kinda hung out for a few minutes, maybe a little longer than they should have, looking around, asking us questions like how long we'd been out there, how long we were staying, and it looked like they were kind of sizing us up. They then abruptly said goodbye and walked away. I didn't necessarily feel threatened by them, and I know for sure my brother didn't, but I still felt uneasy about the whole thing. Fast forward 3 or 4 hours. My brother and I had gone to sleep and were nestling into our tent when I woke up to the sound of multiple dogs barking. I've always been a heavy sleeper, and they sounded like they were only about 100 yards away or so. My heart immediately started pounding, and I kicked my brother through my sleeping bag and asked if he was awake or if he'd heard the dogs. He responded, "I'm awake. They've been getting closer for the past hour or so. Just lay still and don't make any sounds." Needless to say, 12-year-old me was about to shit my pants. We would also hear sporadic shouts from several different sources, but neither came any closer. A few minutes later, my brother whispered, "They're just hunting for hogs. They use the dogs to pin them down and then they shoot them." This gave me some relief, but not much. Somehow, I managed to fall back asleep. The fact that they were doing this late at night was a huge red flag, my brother later told me, but I think at the time, he was just trying to keep me calm. Fast forward what was probably another 3 hours, around 2 AM. I'd managed to sleep pretty well after first hearing the hog hunters, when I woke up to my brother squeezing my shoulder firmly, saying, "Wake up, put your shoes on quickly, and follow me. Be as quiet as you can." My heart immediately went back to racing, because I heard the dogs and the voices in the distance, farther away than before, but still distinct. Not asking any questions, I did what he said, and as soon as we were out of the tent, he told me to get on his back. We snuck about 50 yards into the woods, towards the junction of the path and the stream, and crawled into some bushes. It was up a hill, so we had a pretty good elevated view of our campsite. I remember, as we were laying there, how loudly I was breathing, and how quiet he was, when I heard the very distinct sound of a pistol slide racking. I looked over, and my brother had a pistol, a HK USP that he gave to me a few years after this story took place. He was watching the campsite and the surrounding area. I started to whisper to him, when he put his hand over my mouth and pointed at the campsite. The group of hunters had steadily approached our campsite, and by this time, 30 minutes or so, had reached it. There were 5 of them, and about 3 or 4 dogs. They all looked relatively young, but 2 had either rifles or shotguns, and the dogs were going crazy, obviously having smelled our scent. For those of you who are backpackers or campers, nobody who comes up on a random camp in the middle of the night with dogs and guns has good intentions. I knew this, and my brother knew this. I was scared shitless. I couldn't make out what they were saying, but my brother later told me that they were talking about us, although he hadn't heard any specifics either. They lingered for about 20 minutes, shining flashlights around and talking to themselves, when my brother put his mouth to my ear and said, "If they come towards us, I want you to turn and run as quickly as you can. Don't stop, don't look back. Stay off the trail and look for the flashing lights." I didn't know what he meant by the flashing lights, but I'll get to that later. I knew I could make it back, because he had taught me land nav pretty well. He then handed me a flashlight and told me not to take the red filter off. He later told me that the red filter helps preserve night vision and cuts down ambient light, so it would be harder for someone to see me from a distance. At this point I was so scared I almost started crying, but at the same time I had a rush of adrenaline and what I think now was confidence that he thought I could handle myself. We laid there for a while longer, when, out of nowhere, they started screaming, "Where are you at?" and started firing into the woods at random. My brother dragged me back behind the crest of a hill and threw himself on top of me. Thankfully, from our position on top of the hill, we were protected from any gunfire. They shot maybe 5 or 6 more times, and then started walking back the direction they came from. They got maybe 100 yards away when I heard a blaring siren and saw emergency lights flashing through the woods. Turns out, my brother had called the Forest Service office on a satellite phone he had. He did this while I was asleep, and they had sent out a Forest Service officer and game wardens to our area of the wilderness. The Sipsey Wilderness is about 25,000 acres in size, so it took them a while to get there on the dirt roads. When we saw the game warden's truck, my brother signaled them over with the light and pointed them in the direction the hunters had gone, and the guy sped off, shining his spotlight through the woods. As soon as we were sure they were all gone, we went back to our camp, packed up our shit, and waited by the path for the game warden to come back. The game warden gave us a ride in his truck bed, back to the main staging area. On the ride back, my brother told me how brave I'd been, and that we would talk about it with our parents the next day if I wanted to. I asked him not to do that, because I thought they might never let me go hiking again. We never got any definitive information on what happened to the rednecks we encountered. I have many friends who have gone out to the Sipsey area and had a great time with no creepy stuff going on. However, it truly is a wilderness, and law enforcement response, if you can even reach them, would be slow. I was lucky that my brother was there and reacted so quickly. Otherwise, who knows what could have happened. Number 3. Me and a buddy chose to go backpacking in some national forest in Oregon, specifically for how remote it was. About a year prior, a family became lost in that forest, and the father was never found, although the mother and child lived to tell the tale. Anyway, we set up camp around 4 PM, after getting pretty deep into the woods on a mountain accessed by logging roads, maybe about 100 or 200 yards from where we parked, near a lake. Without much else to do, we started a fire and cracked some beers as the sun went down. Then, some pickup trucks started going through the woods, slowing down when they saw our campfire. We got curious and stupid because of the beers, and went deeper into the woods. Seemed like a hell of a party was going on. Then we stumbled into a clearing, where maybe 15 or 20 dudes were hanging around a bonfire, next to a mossy, run-down camper trailer. One had a pistol on his hip. Another was just chilling with a shotgun. We're thinking, oh shit, at first. But then one of them approaches us, and acts neighborly and invites us to have a beer, so it seemed okay. They were joking around mostly, some talking about drugs, coke, meth. But then there were some older dudes that seemed pretty tense. As this happened, 4 or 5 dudes who seemed to be standing sentry at the camper went inside for a few minutes. This camper didn't look like it had been moved in a very long time. When they came back out, they said we were faggots and saw us making out. Pretty quickly I got up to head back to our site, but my slower, drunker buddy took a few punches. Then he made it out and started following, and we were sprinting through the forest in the darkness, just hoping to get back to our site by spotting the glowing embers of our burnt out fire, all the while being chased by gun-toting nuts. We found our site, and with pretty much everything still in the tent, we pulled the stakes to toss it in the trunk of our car. Then we hear an enraged scream coming from about 50 yards behind us. Something along the lines of, "Kill the faggots." So we were like, fuck it, dropped the tent and gear without even saying a word to each other, and sprinted in the direction of our car. We peeled out and thought we were good, but about 30 seconds later, some headlights come up from behind us, and I'm thinking, fuck, that's the truck that Shotgun Dude was chilling at. So now we're being pursued by crazy gun-toting rednecks with a superior vehicle in unfamiliar forest on unmaintained logging roads in the dark, and the only thing we can do is speed up. I remember looking at the speedometer as we approached a washed-out hairpin turn, and it was moving from 45 to 50 miles an hour, and the truck was tailing us pretty close, like only a couple of feet behind us. I was pretty sure that we were going to slide off that cliff and die. Somehow, my drunk-ass buddy managed to make the turn and get some distance between us and the tweakers, and we eventually made it onto a paved 2-lane, at which point the truck pulled off. We put it together later that that camper van had to be a meth lab. There's nothing else it really could have been. Deep in the forest with armed guards, and looking like it hadn't been moved for years. So in essence, this whole event resulted in a drunken high-speed chase at night on unfamiliar logging roads, and we nearly slid off the side of that mountain. Hi guys, Lazy Masquerade here. Thank you very much for listening. As always, I want to give a big shout out to my artist, Anthony, for the thumbnail that he's given. Make sure to check him out via the links in the description below. He does some great stuff, so make sure to check him out. Subscribe and join the Lazy Legion. Follow me on Facebook, Twitter, and all that jazz, and you'll hear from me again very soon. Stay spooky. And remember, the best things happen in the dark.